My father and mother could not speak a word of English. I stayed most of my time with my parents so I could interpret people who came to visit them. And I'm very fluent in Polish and English. I can just switch like this.
Mm-hmm.
I took that as my course in drawing. Look at my hands. I could look at drawings and I could draw a whole locomotive, the whole picture of it. And then I could flip it over and drive and look at the locomotive from the bottom. And then I could flip it over and I could draw the picture what it looked like from the top. But I enlisted and I had a choice to be in the Air Force or Navy or whatever. I chose the Air Force. And we were going across the Atlantic with no escorts or nothing. And the boat was going like this. All the way across the Atlantic. And it was going back and forth, zigzagging so the submarines could get a beat on us. And we landed in Ujda. They have funny names. I had a half of a tent. And the other guy had the other half. And we put them together and we slept outside in Casablanca until the airplanes could come and pick us up. Well, next thing I knew that we were going to invade Sicily. And I was in the ground crew. I was in the S2 department already. Troopers were going up into the plane. They had to have help to push them in there. Because they were so loaded with guns, ammunition, and everything. They had to help them in there. When the invasion for Sicily came, the American ships starting to shoot at us. And they shot down a couple of our planes. And a lot of paratroopers got, before they could get to the island, they had to crash in the ocean and they drowned.
Do you know why there was such confusion?
I don't know. Nobody communicated with the Navy or nothing. Everybody was on their own, you know.
It was the first real invasion we had.
American troops of General Patton's 7th Army move swiftly through western Sicily, taking town after town as they drive to join General Montgomery's British 8th Army. Through captured Tramini, Marsala, Trapani, Palermo, scenes are the same. More than 50,000 Axis prisoners surrender in the first 3 weeks of the campaign.
General Patton was there too.
Yeah.
And Montgomery was on the southern part. And what they were supposed to do is meet at the end of, before they could cross the ocean. Well, Patton got there and he's waiting for Montgomery to come in. But Montgomery stopped and they had to have their tea. They had to have their tea. And a lot of Germans escaped across the channel into Italy. Yeah.
Did you ever meet Patton there when you were there?
Well, I heard all about him.
What did you hear about him?
Oh, he had no mercy on his troops. He just wanted them to move and move and move. See, our group, the 313 group had four squadrons, and then they had the headquarters. That's how they composed our group.
So your 313th, your job was principally to drop the paratroopers.
Well, you see, being in my category, they wouldn't let me fly in the planes.
It was disaster that should never have happened.
We never saw injuries like that.
Secrecy clothed the actual doings of that night.
Why was the bombing of Bari harbour such a disaster? Why did people with negligible injuries mysteriously begin to die? Why did Eisenhower and Churchill decide to cover up the story, making the Bari disaster one of the most secret events of the Second World War?
Oh, one day we were in Sicily, and I had a buddy who was a crew chief on a C-47. Felix, we have an opening. I think I can get you in on the plane, and we will go to Bari, Italy. And we landed in Bari. The airfield was so loaded with planes, and we were supposed to come back. But they were so busy that they couldn't unload us, so we had to stay overnight. So that night we went to a movie. Now, I don't know what was playing, but it was transformed from Italian to English, you know. And we're sitting in a theater, and all of a sudden, everybody got up, and they're all running out of the theater. So we joined them, and we ran out with the people, and we went underground. And the Germans come by, and they bombed the harbor. That was Bari. Now that was a secret, because we weren't supposed to say a word, anything about it. The Germans come in there and they bombed the fleet, and they killed about 2,000 American merchant marines. And that was a no-no. We weren't supposed to say anything about it.
A few days later, the name of an American ship began to circulate. It was underlined in official documents. The John Harvey. Why? What was this ship carrying? Why was it in Italy? What is the secret of this ship? This ship. We will dip into the nightmare of weapons that most frightened the civilians during the war. Chemical weapons.
Next day we got on they sent us to the airfield, and we looked our plane over, and we had shrapnel in our tail and parts of it in the wings a little bit, but it was flyable. So we got the okay to take off. I got pictures of us flying in our plane, because we had little holes. I would stick my camera in there, and I take a picture of the other planes that were flying back to Sicily. We were training for dropping paratroopers. And after we dropped paratroopers, we turned back and we would get supplies. And at that time we had these C-47s. At first I didn't have too much to do, but I was sent into the into intelligence department. I was called to headquarters, and I had to draw on parchment paper of where our planes were leaving and where they were connecting up with the other two courier groups. And I used to draw on parchment paper that when they got shot down, they were supposed to eat that. That was my job, to do that for the pilots. I got a call to headquarters. Oh my God, what did I do now? But they said, no, don't worry about it. We're going to give you a Jeep, and you're going to have to get up in the morning while everybody is sleeping. You go down to the mess hall and get your breakfast, and we don't want you back at your Quonset house until everybody is sleeping. And when I come back to the base, to my quarters, all the crew chiefs were in that same Quonset house. And not one of them asked me a question of what was going on. But they didn't have to ask me. They knew something was up. And D-Day was coming. I didn't know when D-Day was going to be. But we took a little bet, and I think it was a little under $300 we collected on when D-Day was going to be. But I didn't know anything about it. But all the crew chiefs were in my bay, in my Quonset hut, and they knew that something was up.
Before the first assault takeoff, in each man's ears rang Eisenhower's inspiring order of the day.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well trained, well equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. The United Nations have inflicted upon the Germans great defeats. Our air offensive has seriously reduced their strength in the air and their capacity to wage war on the ground. The tide has turned. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory.
So who won the bet?
I picked D-Day for June 8th, and the next one in our outfit picked is June 10th. That's where I want my money.
Yeah.
I could use it.
What'd you do with the money? How'd you spend it?
I sent a lot of it to my folks.
Oh, you were in England.
Yeah. Well, then they shipped us to France.
Ah.
And while we were in France, our headquarters were in a German bunker. And over the bunker, they had grass growing over that bunker. And that's where we had our office. And the war was on. I had a big map that I had to take care of. Oh, my big map. And I had to keep where all the troops were. Because I used to get a teletype coming in, and I could point where all the troops were. That was my job.
So you knew before everybody else how things were progressing. you'd get information from the field, and then you'd map it out there.
But I couldn't tell anybody anything about it.
Yeah.
That was a secret between the headquarters and the main army, you know. And that was kept a secret, so my mouth was shut out, so I couldn't tell you anything. I was in London.
You were? What was it like? Was there celebration going on?
Yeah, in London, yeah. And I met a Russian soldier who could speak Russian, and we went to a Russian princess that lived in London, and I met the princess.
Did you? What did you have some vodka?
Well, she was from Russia.
No, did you celebrate with some vodka?
No, no, I never drank. You know, a lot of soldiers drank that cognac, you know.
Yep.
But I wasn't. But I wasn't in that category. I didn't smoke. I didn't drink. I led a clean life.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I got my pack of cigarettes, I would give them to my second lieutenant in our outfit.
You've been in the service, you've been gone since 1942, you come home. What was the reunion like when you met your mom and dad?
My mother got the neighbor next door to meet me at the train station. She picked me up. And her neighbor is the one who drove my car back to my home on 743 East 18th Street. And 2 weeks after I got home, I got married. It's my wife there.
Yeah. Your wife, was there a lot of mail?
We wrote in English.
Okay.
I used to write to my mother in Polish. And my mother would get that letter from me, and she would run to her neighbor who would read the letter for her. Well, these are all my pins.
Yep.
That's a good conduct medal. And I think that one is the European. I think these are, what are these, John?
Overseas.
Huh?
Overseas stripes.
Overseas stripes. And this one?
That's for 3 years, at least 3 years in the service.
Yeah, I was in the service a little over 3 years.
And you got your sergeant stripes?
Yeah, that's my sergeant strip.
Well, we salute you. We thank you very much for sharing your story, your time, and this has worked out great for us.